countdown's almost always the most ominous thing, getting ready to go. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another FERMAT Friday. I've got a very, very special guest. I've got Andrew Faris. I feel like he doesn't really need an introduction at this point, but Andrew, you want to give a quick shout to the listeners, give everyone an idea of who they're listening to?
Yes. Hello. Thanks, Alex, for having me. I think I probably still need an introduction. I think you know me. You've got Aaron Ordorf working in your company, and he's a good friend. So obviously, there's some crossover there. I'm Andrew. I run AJF Growth, which is a boutique agency focusing on growth, focusing on meta ads, and sort of some financial strategy type stuff with my brands, and have the Andrew Faris podcast, and am on Twitter. So I've been kind of all around between brand side, was also at Common Thread Collective for a while. I'm still real good friends with Taylor Holiday, and we still do some content together and some of those things. And then ran an aggregator for a little bit called 4x400, where we had a portfolio of up to 6 brands at a time. A couple years ago, left that, started a boutique agency, keep 5 managed clients right now, and then put out some content. So yeah, that's the story.
The elevator pitch. And like, Andrew, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, is like you have a unique perspective working on the brand side, the agency side, kind of like working all over the place, particularly in the meta accounts. And I think like over the course of this conversation, I just kind of want to like pick your brain on where the industry is at in terms of like the role of the growth marketer, advertising in general. And to kind of like kick us off, I've been having a conversation internally lately, kind of around this idea of, are we approaching a local maximum in the meta account? And what I mean by that is like, if you're doing it properly, are we at a point where like we're kind of just building towards the final like 5% or 10% of what's possible at the ad account level? And if that is the case, like what ends up being the next frontier for where growth marketers can find more value?
So yeah, maybe let me ask you a question back to clarify what you mean. Are you thinking of that at the specifically at the media buying level, or like, yeah, how are you thinking about where that local maximum is?
Yeah, I think like more at the media buying level. Mostly like the way I kind of think about it is, and feel free to disagree. I don't think you're going to disagree with me on this one, is like you can kind of like you can keep creating and throwing more creative into the meta account, and it's kind of like going to self optimize to like a certain point. So as long as you're feeding it with high quality content and like a high quality mindset, it's going to keep optimizing. And like at what point is more or better quality going to get like a crazy different result there?
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's the right distinction, which is like creative versus media buying. At the media buying level, I definitely think we're reaching a local maximum where, like, essentially the idea that you could run your meta ads account on manual bids and have a sense of uh, where Meta's machine learning could do the work of distributing your ads for you instead of you having to choose that. That is a local maximum. The caveat I would add there is that there's still a lot of people who aren't really doing it that way, um, like a huge number of people. And so like I won't shut up about this cost controls issue for a while still, because I still get feedback all the time, like constantly, from people who are like, "Whoa, it's crazy! I switched to bid caps and target ROAS or cost caps or whatever, any of those three, right?" Um, and man, it's crazy. My ad account got like way better. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I talk about it so much. And people actually really love the idea that like that isn't that big of a difference maker. And media buying is dead, and like, talk about the things that matter, like margin and creative and offers and stuff like that. And look, I think all that stuff matters. I try to talk about it all too. But the truth is, it is a bigger deal than people think, and it really matters. And the reason for that is because spending your next best dollar in the right place for the first or second biggest line item in your business, which is meta ads. Typically, if you have a bigger line item in your business, the only one is your actual product COGS.
Yep.
But Meta is typically number 2 for e-commerce brands. Like, optimizing the distribution of those dollars matters, and so it makes a really big difference. And I would just say what I've said to other people: like, don't let anybody tell you that it doesn't. Like, it really does matter. If your agency is telling you it's not that big of a deal, they are wrong. It is a big deal. It's not the only deal, and there may be reasons to not make that the only thing you care about, but it is a big deal, and it's important to get it right. So there's that. Go. I was going to jump to creative because I think there's another part of the conversation there. With that in mind, as people are going to manual bids, at that point, yes, I think that there is a local maximum there. It is a big deal, but there's only so much ground you can cover there.
Yeah, I was actually going to go there next when you're talking about like, hey, let's delineate between media buying and like building the creative on this. So like we just talked about the media buying side of this, like on the creative front, like maybe give our listeners like a little bit of your philosophy on like, okay, how do we feed the creative to this? Like, what is kind of your general take on that?
Yeah. Well, so if you take what I just said and you assume that manual bid based media buying works, that would mean that you have this setup when you're going to go distribute your ad dollars where you can put, where Meta is only going to spend on ads that are likely to generate a return for you. If it spends on other ads, it is not going to spend very much on those before it, like, quote unquote, realizes that, right? That its predictive Bayesian forecasting machine does that. Um, so that means that now you can give Meta essentially limitless volumes of creative and let it sort out what it should spend on versus what it should not. And that is a significant incentive. Like, just imagine if podcast advertising worked this way. Like, if every podcaster was like, hey, we're only going to put your ads on our podcast if if it's going to generate sales for you, right? And the moment that it starts generating sales, we're going to ramp it. We're going to actually put it on every one of our podcasts, and we're going to, whatever. If that's how podcast advertising works, what you would do is go create lots and lots of different podcast ad reads for lots and lots of different podcasts and try to reach all of those. And now you've completely eliminated the risk of spending bad dollars there. The thing that stops you from doing that for a direct media buy situation like that would be the fact that, like, you can waste a ton of money testing creative and testing offers and testing messaging, right? But in this case, now we've eliminated that. Now, so if you work backwards from there, if that's the way this is going to go, now you have this incentive to launch a huge amount of creative really fast. And this gets into now this question of, like, does that mean you ought to launch the highest quality creative you possibly can or the most creative you possibly can? My answer is yes. You should try as best you can to do both. I am a believer that people are hilariously bad, including people like me who have 10 years running Meta ads at this point. Like, I am hilariously bad at predicting which ads are going to work and which ads are not going to work. It's astounding. And sometimes people do shows where they, like, do content where it's like professional analyzing ads to decide if they're good or not, and it's just like, is such nonsense. Like, this is the worst content on the internet because it's like, they have no idea unless they have access to the yeah. And even if they have access to the data about whether the ad performed or not, they're pretty bad, I think, at being certain about the mechanism for the performance, right? So if it, like,
Yep.
if they know the ad performed, they will tell you here's why it performed, and they will often be wrong about why it performed. And I mean, I'm not, if they weren't, then they would make more ads all the time that performed all the time. So anyway, the so that is an argument for quantity as well, because basically, if you assume that your ability to predict the future is pretty low, then quantity is going to work. I do think at the same time that I see brands really get very effective pushing their Meta ads account way farther than they think. And this is where I will say we are not at a local maximum by generating better messaging to more of their customers more specifically. And this is probably the area I'm thinking the most about right now for my own agency and for my own clients, is like, how do we do a better job speaking to more of our customers more effectively, more directly, by really hitting the things that they particularly care about. And when I see, like, brands who grow their Meta ad spend to 7 figures a month and put all their attention there, like, a lot of it is because they really are able to generate messaging down to very specific subsets of customers, and they understand deeply how to talk to different customers and different customer needs differently. I give a lot of examples of that if it helps. I'll give one really fast, actually, just because I think it'll help you illustrate what I'm saying. I've used this example in a few places recently. The former CEO of LoomCube, which is a LED light brand, his name's Riley Strickland, really smart guy. Riley was saying that when he was the CEO of LoomCube and he was working on stuff, he was sort of a marketing type CEO, and he said one of the things they discovered at one point was that they had, they, like a lot of brands, like, they blew up during COVID, home office lighting, like, it was just like they couldn't have been better positioned to blow up during COVID. And so they sold a lot of home office lighting, right? For sure. But they realized somewhere along the way that their lights also seemed to be getting appeal and getting traction with tattoo artists. And that there was a unique way in which their lighting setups worked with tattoo artists. Well, if you think about that, right, it is the exact same product that is being advertised to two different people, home office versus tattoo artist, but everything about the context of the ad and the messaging is probably different. And he said when they did that, then they started building ads, starting with creative all the way through the funnel to appeal to a tattoo artist and build tight funnels for that. That's where they would see 30 and 40%, conversion rate increases off of basically the same piece of creative. And I think if you take that mentality and think about that in your business and think about how does my product appeal differently to different customers, you have now got the case for how to generate a lot more creative in your ad account. And since we're here, you've made the case for FERMAT. Honestly,
we will get yeah, we will
yeah.
get there. We will get there in a second, I promise. The one thing you said there that I want to kind of double click on is, hey, do you want better quality or do you want more of it? Hey, both. But then like we started to drill down and it's like specificity. So how can you get more of something and keep the quality super high? Is like, let's start to get specific to one, who we're talking to and what we're talking about. So like that's something we talk about at FERMAT all the time, is like, okay, we have a bunch of different personas and there's a bunch of different value props that exist inside of those personas. So, hey, how do we speak specifically to each of those? And I think like that's one of the biggest problems I'm actually seeing right now across kind of like the growth marketer is, hey, I'm starting to get very specific at the ad level. I'm speaking to this persona about this value prop, and I can chop up my creative and get very fine and detailed there. But what happens on the click? Now on the click, I'm sending it to kind of like the host of typical places I might send someone to. If you're just getting started, it's a homepage. You're more sophisticated, you might be building custom catalogs, going to a PDP. If you're very sophisticated, you're going to like a specific landing page for each of these. But like, I think growth marketers are at this point where it's like, oh, I have so much creative velocity at the ad account, but I don't feel like I have that creative velocity on the other side of this. Like, are you seeing this? Are you coming up against kind of this, like the specificity is getting hard to kind of take through the entire funnel?
Yeah, well, when we onboarded with FERMAT for one of my clients, right, this was basically the exact thing that we saw. It was like that same lighting story I just told, but for a very different client with a very different thing. And it was exactly for this reason. It was a supplement client, and the supplement client we were looking at, and it is like, oh, some people are taking this supplement. I mean, I don't think this is it, but let's just call it a multivitamin, right? Some people are
Yep.
taking multivitamin because they wanted, just to feel more alert during the day. Other people have a general sense that they're nutrient deficient and that something like that. Other people, like their doctor told them you should start taking a multivitamin, something, whatever. So like, and maybe people want to sleep better or perform better working out or something. Like those are really different value propositions, and they may care about everything related to multivitamin at some point, but the entry point to the product is really different. And so, I mean, I would say at the creative level, there's like two things here. One of them is sometimes you discover that with just pure volume. So this is where like I'm a big fan of customer generated content. I have like I have a friend that I'm working with who is building an app called Bonafidio, and it's just like collect customer generated videos and images for you, and then that will be extremely cheap content for you. A lot of it will not work, but you can create so much of it for so cheap. And then the customers also are going to tell you what they're interested in. You can use that for your B-roll library, like all kinds of stuff. That's like part of it. And I'm a big fan of my friends at Kinship, and who started off their agency with influencer marketing. And the idea was like, we're just going to send your product to a bunch of influencers. They're going to post it, and then we're going to reuse the content. And in the end, net of all of the costs involved, it's going to be like $20 for a single piece of content. You do that at massive scale, run it through manual bids, and it works. So there's like a spray and pray kind of way. And of course, AI is changing this conversation as well with people so that that can happen. There's like a lot of different stuff that you can think about for how to build volume. But I think there's another level where the place where people get stuck is actually like that they haven't really thought about their customers and with that kind of level of specificity. And so this is, I think, where the real like kink is in this process, right? Which is like they need to unkink, and the unkinking is like they need to start thinking about really specifically what the difference between customer A and customer B is, in even on the same product, and then start trying to speak to those people really differently. That's actually pretty hard work. It requires like a lot of thought work. It's one of the reasons why like I don't just want AI to read my reviews for me and spit insights out. I actually want to do that for me because I value the process of reading I value the mental work involved with me sitting and reading reviews and just hearing from customers and making notes as I go, and sort of like that sort of mental churning that happens in that process is good for me as an advertiser, because then I can think about, okay, who are these people, get a little picture in my mind of what they're like, and then turn around and try to make ads that speak really specifically to those customers. You start to do that over the course of your business, and what you'll find is your still images, your videos, the stuff that you're making yourself, maybe even stuff that you've heard from customers, is going to speak to these really specific value propositions, right? And as you do that, that is great. And then, yes, you will at some point get stuck sending all of that traffic to a PDP, which by definition has to be more general. It has to like speak to a really wide range of customers. And this is where I think thinking post click, and yeah, for us with Vermont, this was the whole point, was like we could not. I think it was AO at Vermont who sort of came up with the phrase like make funnels like the way you make ads, or however you guys say it. Like that was basically right. Like to be able to generate the rest of the experience post click, all the way down to custom PDPs and custom funnels and stuff like that, was like a real value. And I know some, you Alex have previewed to me some of the other tools you guys are working on to like make this even easier. It's pretty slick. Like, and I think the idea of being able to like really drive that all the way through is really good. I don't know of another thing to do that accomplishes this in quite the same way as you guys do, because once you've started to land on that specific value, you're really somewhere. Let me just give one more example, because I think it'll help illustrate the point further. I had Jack Rubin on my podcast for the third time. You should go listen to all three of those. They are great episodes, because Jack is building a monster business in Purdy and Fig and in the UK. And it's also one of those ones where like people talk about their numbers a lot, and they talk about like, oh, we're growing this much. And then you look under the hood of their business and you're like, oh, it's really not as good as you said. I coach Jack's business. Like I've had him on 3 times. He has never told a lie about like what is going on in his business. The growth that they're having is actually that legit. And so I know for real this stuff is working. And one of the things he said that I thought was so brilliant on their podcast, on my most recent podcast episode with him, was he said they realized it's like a spray cleaning solution, right? Like for cleaning your kitchen counter and stuff. And he said we realized that one subset of our customers they spot clean. So they like just go find dirty spots, spray on that, and then clean. That's the way I clean, right? My wife would say poorly. And like
same here.
And yes, right, yeah. And then other people, their cleaning habit in their life is like it's an end of day or end of every couple days, like almost like a wind down routine, and they go clean all kinds of stuff in their house, and it's like part of their rhythm, and they like doing it, right? If you think about that, it's the exact same product, 2 different customers, and maybe even the value proposition for the customers is a little bit different, around how this product makes that experience better for the customer. And it's the same thing. Like you definitely can send both of those customers to the same landing page. You for sure can. But man, the more that you are able to speak distinctly to that, then look at all of the other things going on in the business. And this is a cleaning product, and they've been able to get to huge volumes of spend, like by doing this game much further than those 2 examples that I just gave you. And so that mental work into the actual execution of it, I think, is extremely hard. And yes, that is where the growth marketer probably needs to spend their time.
Yeah, getting that specificity kind of from the ad to the click, and then following from the click all the way to the purchase. Like you were saying, like a bunch of good examples there. And like we hit on 2 of the key ones that we talk about at FERMAT a lot, which is again that like the value prop and the user or the persona, because you can speak to both of these specifically, but be talking about the same product. And yeah, you can go to a PDP. So like for a supplement, as an example, say like it has a bunch of different benefits. It helps with hair growth. It helps with sleep. If you're going to put an ad together that is honing in on the sleep benefits of the product, you then go to a PDP. Like you said, it has to be like we talk about, the website has to be average, but average in a good way, right? Like it has to be this culmination of all these different things, because you don't know who's there, what they're looking for. But one of the benefits of someone coming in from a specific ad is I know exactly what they were looking at. I know the exact benefit that they were chasing. And if I can put a very specific experience together on the back end of this, then like I'm keeping that consistency all the way through. The best way to illustrate this is like ad says, are you having trouble sleeping? Lands on a lander, and that lander's like, look at all of these 16 different benefits of this multivitamin. No, I came in wanting to have a better sleep. I would have been much better served if that landing page was like, hey, here's the 5 ingredients that are focused on a better sleep. And I click into it, and that PDP is talking about sleep benefits rather than it just being a sub point or a bullet point on a regular PDP. I can kind of build it up that way.
Yep.
And like kind of like subtle plug for FERMAT here is like you're able to build that with the same velocity that you would at the ad account. When we say build funnels, like you build ads, that's what we mean. Like you can build these quickly, you can spin them up and be specific in the same way that you would at the ad level. So there's not like this compromise of, hey, my multivitamin has 18 different ad variations for different use cases and personas, but they go to like one, maybe three different post click experiences. I might throw away one of those ads and be like, it doesn't work. But really, what the problem is there's no like the promise alignment between what the ad's saying and what they actually end up seeing on the other side.
Yep. And I think the place where people get stuck here is that they start to think that like the moment you drill into something more specific is the moment you lose the broader audience. And I think that's actually totally wrong. Like the actual way you reach the most people is by being more specific with less people. And then you do that enough times to where you pile it up over and over. And if you can do that, that's the way you build the largest ad account. Basically, is like you mentioned that you referenced that the cleaning product works. That's probably day one of your ad account, right? But year three or whatever that Jack's been working on pretty and fig, right? Is when you're going like, wait a minute, what if I have a whole creative team building a bunch of concepts where it is like, okay, now I think about um, both of these two different people with their different cleaning behaviors. You're actually narrowing your total audience by speaking only to the spot cleaners. And so it feels in some ways, and this is a conversation I've had a lot of times with people, it feels like when you do that, you're like leaving too many people on the table. Like, don't we want to talk to don't we want to reach the widest possible audience? But the thing is, ads by definition are speaking to a tiny subset of a tiny subset, right?
Yep.
If you think about like you get a 2% click through rate on your ads and then you convert 4% of those people or whatever, like I'm not doing the math exactly right, but that's like, it's like what, 1 out of 500 people that you reach is actually going to buy. Like you are already reaching a tiny percentage of the people who you possibly could reach. It's actually lower than that, right? It's like 1 out of every 5,000 people or something. Anyway, whatever, forget the math.
Small
the,
amount.
the point is like, you, yeah, it's a very small number of the people who you're actually putting your ad in front of are actually buying the product, at least at a direct response level. Um, and the way to increase the effectiveness of the ads is actually not just to raise the total number of people you could reach, but oftentimes, for some brands, that's probably true, right? Maybe for apparel brands or something like that. But for most of us, the way you do that is actually by speaking better to a narrower slice of the audience and then finding multiple slices of the audience so that the sum total of all of that actually ends up reaching a larger group. And that's probably the way to think through how you actually scale the ad account with a bunch of diversity. If that's the fundamental challenge, then then thinking about that all the way through the funnel, not just at the ad level, becomes like a crucial part of the game.
Yeah, and like you were saying there, like the trap is, hey, if I have a wide appeal and a wide audience, I'm going to get as many people as I can. But to your point is like if I find the right slivers and stack them up on top of each other, I am more effective, and the summation of all of those different ones equals more than what I would have got on the broad approach. I think like
Correct.
one of my favorite follows right now on LinkedIn is Preston from Chubbies. And like he's kind of on
Yeah.
this crusade on LinkedIn right now with like, if you always just look for efficiency, 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 you will get really efficient at a small group of people. And it will look like your ad account is flourishing, but you're not actually expanding into anything net new. Where what we're
Yeah.
talking about here is like, hey, if I keep on experimenting and trialing and like getting specific, I might be able to carve out net new pieces of the market that my previous creative and my previous approach wasn't actually getting
We're not going to
anyone at.
reach. Right.
Exactly. So like I find these new slivers I can go carve out that are net new to my business rather than like, oh, my ad account has like the best ROAS. Like pick your efficiency metric of choice is like, oh, my ad account's super efficient, but not necessarily like growing me into anything new.
Yep. I'll tell you what I've been thinking about most of this recently is that like if your marketing messaging can speak and like this always sounds so mercenary when you say this, like almost like it's like trying to trick people into buying your stuff. Like if your product actually appeals and does a good job and makes promises and can deliver on the promises to a wider range of people, then your job is just to figure out how to communicate that to them in a way that makes sense in a world where they're getting bombarded with other people trying to convince them the same thing. So all the other stuff should happen, right? Build a great product, deliver a great product, and then actually deliver on the promises that you make. If you do that, And actually, sometimes I've even seen people do this well to where this creates product development for them and stuff as they start to really think more carefully about who their products are or who their customers are. But yeah, anyway, like if you think for a second about what we're really saying here, uh, it's um, it's that you want to actually find the places of emotional and like life resonance with real people and understand their experience as best as possible, understand what they care about and what's driving them, and then be able to speak to that, so that their experience of the world and of their life has some overlap with how your product can make it better, right? And that requires digging in deeper with those people to think through like, okay, how do you do that? You mentioned two elements of this, right? Which is the product benefit and the specific customer, and like going through that exercise and thinking those things. That is precisely what I'm doing some work internally right now with my team, like um, to sort of define what we mean by the word angle in an ad. What
Mm.
is an ad angle? And that is exactly where I've landed on. It is a specific benefit for a specific customer. And the more that you can hone in on both of those, and the more you can use language and visuals that um, that that really hit people's, again, like actual sort of experiential and emotional resonance with those two things, the more effective you're going to be. And that's like what I'm looking for the most. I mean, I have to be a little careful because some things I can't talk about from clients or whatever. But like, if I was allowed to say everything, right, I could give you a lot of examples of that. That is what I'm on the hunt for right now as an advertiser, and what I'm trying to think about at the level of creative development.
So with going out, like I agree, that's a great definition of the angle, like specific benefits, specific custom. Like honestly, to me, the name of the game in D2C right now is specificity and velocity. Like how can I be
Yep.
as specific as I possibly can be, and how can I do it in a fast and repeatable way? I keep on coming back to like essentially everything right now in like the growth marketing sphere is around like build, measure, adapt, and how can I keep that loop as tight as possible. So like once
Yep.
I learn something, and I think again, I think like the ad account is a great place to learn these things because like again, the creative velocity is so high. All the measurement is right there inside the meta account. Like I can see what's going on. And like depending on what you're using, like you're getting that self-optimizing on that. So I think it's been like this amazing playground to play in. And then again, like specific benefit, specific customer, I would then add like specific experience is like,
Yep.
okay, what am I going to see from there? Because again, all that specificity, if it doesn't extend out of the ad account and into like the actual landing experience or the funnel that you're going to create, then you're just going to lose them. You might learn a lot about like the type of customer that you can be appealing to, but that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is how do
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get that person to ultimately buy something?
Yeah, and I think that's right. And this actually even goes. So if you think about this, the ad account first, it's actually it's the cheapest way to test this kind of thing for sure, especially with manual bids, like I said, because like if you're not resonating, you just won't get spent. So there's really very little risk to attempting a new angle or something. Um, and then sort of the next place I would go right after creative is down to the level of working with someone like FERMAT, where it's like working with you guys, where it's like you go, okay, now I can take this all the way through the post-click experience. But there's actually another step past even that, which is sort of which is like in some ways more obvious, which is like the broader marketing campaign thinking and the broader sort of brand investment. And this is where brands are truly great, where you actually go like, okay, I mean, what would have happened if Loom Cube showed up at a tattoo artist convention? What if they, like the brand I mentioned earlier, right? So now they've built the ad and the funnel, but what I don't know if there's two tattoo artist charities to support. Like I have no idea. Are there tattoo artists influencers specifically that they can go do a partnership with? Like, can they do co-branded product with tattoo? Like, there's a million places you can go to say, okay, this customer resonates with our product. How do we make sure that we show as clearly as possible that we are really for and investing in the things that this customer actually cares about, and showing up in the places that they care about? The most effective marketing campaign I've ever been a part of in any way was actually my first job in D2C, which was at Kalo, Silicone Wedding Ring Company. At Kalo, we at some point realized fairly early on that we had really good resonance in CrossFit. Alex, before we started recording, I mentioned that I do CrossFit. Like that happened because of this Kalo marketing campaign. Like I just like as a team. Yeah, you got your Kalo ring right now. Okay, great. So yeah, we started. The whole way I started even doing CrossFit was because like it was we as a company decided we were going to like really try to understand and get involved with this customer. So like the company got us like, half price gym memberships or something like that. Like even for the employees, it was like, we're going to know these people and care about them. By the end, we had sponsored major CrossFit influencers. We were partnering with and supporting CrossFit charities. We showed up at the CrossFit Games and at CrossFit Regionals with a booth. We sponsored the CrossFit Games. We were in CrossFit magazines and CrossFit podcasts. We were all over the place, and it was an extremely high ROI thing. Now that was a great example of this exact thing, um, which is that, like, in fact, an electrician wears a Kalo ring for a very different reason than a CrossFitter does,
Mm-hmm.
even though the appeal is for both of them, right? An electrician doesn't want to burn their finger off, but they do want to wear a wedding ring because their marriage is significant to them. And a CrossFitter doesn't want to wear a metal wedding ring because they're going to be doing pull-ups on a barbell or pull-ups or lifting a barbell, and it's going to hurt if you wear a metal ring, right? So anyway, so at the end of the day, though, we were able to kind of go that, and I think that's like the real logical end of this is to show up in all of the places your people are at, and to do that. That's actually like the most fun marketing too. It's like now
Yep.
you're actually becoming a part of a community and a culture, stuff that gets you out of bed more than just like make the ROAS go up on Facebook. Like that's fun as far as it goes, but like, yeah. So, and to me, that's where all this stuff goes to is like really thinking, even start at the level of creative, test it there, start adding in funnels, because that's the way you're actually going to grow it. Like I said, 30-40% conversion rate lifts. Like when we added FERMAT with our brand, we started doing this, we saw an almost immediate 50% increase in our spend. Like it just was like right away. Being able to test offers more easily, there's some mechanical things like that that are really helpful, tactical things like that. But then over time, eventually what you do is you take that down to the next level now and say like, okay, how do we build really beyond even that stuff?
Yeah, like I love that specificity all the way through, like through the funnel, but just like through your entire like through your all of your marketing campaigns and your marketing efforts, and like what you were saying there, like sponsoring CrossFit Games, like getting influence, like all of this produces additional content that can then be recycled into
Yep.
everything that we were just talking about, right? Like I was talking to a brand the other day, and they do it's basically like a veggie, like vegetable powder, and they're like, oh yeah, like moms love us because like their kids don't taste the veggies in here. And then I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then they're like, then I look at something on their site, and I'm like, oh, like this is you like biking. He's like, oh yeah, like endurance athletes love us too.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
That's fantastic and lets you like carve out those additional slivers. But again, like if I send, like, think about the difference there: mom with kids versus hardcore endurance athlete. I don't know about you, but like I would consider myself an okay marketer, and I don't know how I would merchandise a PDP or a
No.
landing page to appeal to both of those people. Like it's
Yeah.
near impossible.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's totally right. Yeah, I mean, actually, for the supplement client that we talked about, right? Like we've had this exact same conversation, even specific to CrossFit, where it's like we are confident that like a super performance oriented person would love this. We've even had professional CrossFitters reach out to us wanting product stuff like that. Like and and at the same time, we're just like, oh, but we haven't built the marketing to really support this yet, and we haven't actually proven out that we can do this. And so what we need to go do next is go create creative and then specifically tag with the Vermont lander and go like, okay, can we actually then make this case about what is the thing that this person uniquely cares about? Because yeah, the endurance athlete and the mom, I mean, mom with kids, it's so different. It's so different. And the thing, and even like if you think about the objections for those customers, right? Like, yeah, I mean, like I don't know, but maybe mom with kids is going to be like, first of all, is this going to poison my kids? Secondly, um, does it actually taste good? Like, are we sure we're going to be able to get this past my kid? Just trick them with it.
Yep.
And then like with the endurance athlete, I bet they're going to be much more concerned about like the actual nutrient profile down to their endurance goals, and like or down to mixed in with the rest of their diet, and how does this fit in with all the things? When do I take it? How often? How whatever. In fact, the endurance athlete also may be less price sensitive, right? Like they may be somebody who's so invested in their hobby, they're like, whatever, if it makes me better, it's great. And maybe the mom is like, grocery budget's grocery budget. Like I've only got so much, and so I don't know, but like those would be things that I'd be thinking about, where even the objections that you answer are gonna be different.
Yeah, and like what we were talking about at the beginning too, like being able to go deeper into the funnel. Like if you're just messing with a landing page there, say again, like endurance athlete and mom example, it's like, hey, the landing page is all about like the taste, the look, and like it's trying to be appealing to kids. But then like at the landing page, if that's just pulling in all my regular PDPs from Shopify, and I actually was targeting the endurance athlete with kind of like my core messaging and like the visuals, now it's going to be out of whack. And even like how you order things. Like the endurance athlete's going to care about like the carb content and the specific ingredients.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
I
Yeah.
actually want visual number one on the PDP to be nutritional information. And like, hey, all the other supplemental images are someone working out. But like, if we flip it and that endurance athlete comes in and it's like, yeah, like it tastes really great and like looks like it's 5 servings of vegetables, like, okay, cool, like that's not what I'm
Cool.
here
Yeah.
for. I'm lost instantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Andrew, this was amazing. Any kind of like wisdom for people who are trying to get this specificity kind of like all the way through? Any kind of final thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's two things you can do right away. The first is like go read your reviews, and just like look for things that look for emotions, right? So just like try to find the places, and then also look for really specific call outs about people's lifestyles. I'll give you another example of
Yep.
this from reviews I read recently. I looked at a deodorant brand's reviews, clean deodorant, mostly aiming at women primarily, and saw specifically that some women specifically called out where they live as being particularly hot places. Like it's July in Texas, and so I sweat a lot. Like that kind of deal. And then other people specifically called out their fitness routine. So they're just like, I work out every day, I get really sweaty, etc. Right? Like those are two different experiences that people are expressing about things that in their mind make them uniquely sweaty and maybe stinky, but they're different. They're not the same thing, right? Like you might be a fitness enthusiast in San Diego where it's never hotter than 75 degrees and it's beautiful every day, like I don't know. So thinking about like those two things, like that kind of exercise is really useful for that. Go read your reviews, and that's specifically the thing to look for. Like, what are the benefits people are calling out specifically, and then what are the things about their lives they're calling out specifically. And then secondly, what I would say is if on top of that, use this kind of thinking to try to pursue value propositions that are not showing up in your reviews. So if you
Yes.
differentiate in some way that people are not responding to yet, fine, go try it. Like use that as a net new angle and try to take a swing in a different way. If you just have this inkling, like I just know this product would work with this customer, like go do that. Now, and this is like, again, if you're using FERMAT, like you should be thinking about like, just go build the lander on the back end of this that basically teases out and really the whole funnel, right? The lander, the PDP, everything that teases out all the things that you are thinking about how this is likely to appeal to a certain customer. Set up a test if you need to, and split the traffic between a couple different versions of that page, and see what you can get to. Because so that's like the way forward for me with this is to like just start with your reviews. That's simple. Look for things that are being called out, and then outside of that, go ahead and use your gut. Like think about what are those things that you're not seeing resonating in your marketing yet, but that you're just confident could. And that's probably the way I would start trying to build out these angles. So yeah, that would be like the next place I put my attention.
Yeah, experiment with velocity. And I think like through this conversation we've identified that like that experimentation is easiest at the ad account but not necessarily like effective all the way through. So like, hey, just find those ways to experiment, try different creative, try it at the ad account and try it all the way through the funnel. And if you want to be able to go further through the funnel, shameless plug, grab some time with
Yeah.
FERMAT. We can show you how to do
Yeah.
it. But like that specificity all the way through again is the name of the game for me. And like you were saying, hey, go try something out, build it in a FERMAT funnel. That's actually separate from the main site too. So there's like zero brand risk of doing it too. Like attach it to an ad and like no harm, no foul. If it doesn't work, it was in an isolated experience and kind of wipe your hands of it.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, Andrew, this was amazing. Thanks for jamming. Really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, my pleasure.